So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this edition of AFA Today. We're very lucky today. So, we're going to be talking about why people join AFA and what membership means to people. And we're going to do that with two of our board members, two outstanding leaders. We have Ken Throckmorton, who is the president elect, who will take over in January of 2026 to be our AFA president. And then we have Mike DeLorenzo, who is currently the chair of the chapter president's committee. So when we think about our grassroots experience and the presidents, Mike leads that team of folks that are leading our grassroots initiative. So welcome to each of you. So Ken, let me start with you and just give us a sense of your business and where you sit in the industry, and then we'll move over to you, Mike. So Ken, let's start with you. Who are you?
I'm good, thank you. My name's Ken Throckmorton. Mike introduced me, but I'm the owner of Forever Fence and Rail here in Sharon Center, Ohio. I've had that company for 11 years. I worked for another company prior, starting in 2007. And prior to that, I was a chef. So I got out of that life and got a couple PhDs, or post-hole diggers for you that aren't paying attention at home, but It's been good.
And Mike, what about you?
So I am Mike DeLorenzo. Wayside Fence is my family business. I'm third generation. Been doing this since I was probably six, and now the general manager, also part owner. Where we came from an small installation company through to fabrication, manufacturing, and now wholesale distribution with two locations: one in New York, Bayshore, New York, and one in Newington, Connecticut. We service most of Northeast and Long Island and parts of Jersey. And like Ken, I grew up. I grew up with a wholesale digger in my hand. And unlike Ken, I actually tried to leave this business probably more times than I can say. But what they say about the fence business, they just once they got you, you're in.
Yeah, that's true. So, well, thank you both for those introductions. And for the sake of this interview, I'd like you to kind of remain. So when you're answering the questions and we're talking about membership, keep the perspective that you currently have in mind. So, so Mike, keep that role of the grassroots and the chapter focus, and Ken, you keep that role of kind of the national organization. And obviously, both of you have experiences that carry over to the other one. But just as you start to answer each of these, take that perspective so that we can get both the grassroots experience and kind of the national organization experience. So, Ken, let's start with you. When you think about the spark that made you decide to join AFA, what do you think about? What was going through your mind? What were you thinking about, and what first brought you to AFA?
So I didn't know at the time, but my local wood supplier, Michael Kalinich, who still is to this day, I think he was in the 90s, the president of the association, the youngest president of the association, was like, you should join AFA and it'll help you out. Fence Tech's coming up. I didn't know what Fence Tech was. Your membership alone will give you savings to Fence Tech. And then, there's unlimited things you can do with the AFA that help you grow your business. Knowing that I just left a fence company that was nothing with me and starting my own, sure. So that's what really sparked me, not knowing anything about it, signing up as a member and to go to Fence Tech in 2015.
So what I find interesting is about that story and kind of your origin story in terms of you making a choice is that you can actually tie it back to one single person that encouraged you to join. And that person encouraged you to join, even though they were intimately involved in the organization. You were brand new to the industry. And I think that there's a perception out there that AFA only focuses on established fence companies, only focuses on those fence companies that are a certain size. But that's just not the case. I mean, you are a perfect example of brand new to the industry in terms of setting up your own business, and yet here was somebody who was very established in the organization and in the industry, encouraging you to be a member.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, you know, fast forward, I've been fortunate enough to be instructors and chairs of different schools and different things. And, meeting those people that tell me I've been in the industry 2 weeks now. And so
Right.
someone has got to them, 2 weeks before we did to sign up for this, or a boss got to them and said, "Hey, you're going to go to this." It's amazing how many times you actually do see that. But then also you see people that have been in the industry 15 years and didn't know about AFA. I knew Fence Tech, but I didn't know it was AFA.
Right. So, Mike, what's your experience? What first brought you individually and then collectively the business to AFA?
So, my general manager at the time, Sal Militello, he was very, very involved in the New York chapter. He was president on and off, so on and so forth. When I decided to jump from the installation division into the wholesale division, he had asked if I could join one of the meetings, and I remember going to this meeting, meeting a bunch of people. I had no idea, but it put me out to a level of people that I didn't even know existed. Because when you're in an installation company, you only know your customer base. You're not really dealing with suppliers and other competitors, for that matter. When I got in the room with everyone, the conversations were mind opening, and it helped me understand. Wow, there's more than just my what I knew. So it branched me out. Fast forward, I decided that it was under Sean Brown, the presidency, that I wanted to get involved as the YFP director. That was my introduction to a director position, and then shortly after Sean left, I actually rose my hand. I didn't go to the bathroom. I rose my hand to be the president, and little did I know, here I am, fast tracking out to meeting all you guys, which has been, again, a very it was an open door experience for me to a whole new world that I didn't know existed. I really didn't. I didn't. I knew there was I knew there was there were schools in Texas. Nobody really talked about it in New York. It was a very, those guys don't, do it their way. We do it our way mentality. But I didn't see things that way. I said this is an opportunity for me to understand more about what people do in this industry. Fence here, fence there. We're all building the same type of security.
So I like that. I like that, Mike, because for you, there was a moment where this wasn't just a membership. This actually started to begin to feel like a community.
Yeah.
So, Ken, can you think back and in your experience where this wasn't just something that somebody suggested to you, where it wasn't just a membership? Can you think about when it started to become a community for you?
So I went to Fence Tech 2015 in my first one. And then that's November, I went to AFA University in Texas. I talked to one of my salesmen from a manufacturer standpoint, and like, hey, what do you think? I think I'm gonna take this gate designer course, and then because that's only a couple days, I'm gonna take the sales training course also. I'm just gonna be out there the week. And he's like, well, you're already a good salesperson. Why would you do that? At the time I didn't put it together, but I was thinking you can always learn. So I went out to AFA University, not as the installer side. I saw Travis and I saw Hoop and I saw all those guys on the, in the banquet hall as we ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But, I was as the fence installer guys call us, I was one of the nerds sitting at the desk. But that right there, especially at nighttime when you're sitting around the watering hole talking with people and realizing, hey, my problem is the same problem they're having in Colorado and in Minnesota versus Ohio. So that's when it really felt like a community.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to remember that not everybody has the same orientation that we do to the organization. And so it can be intimidating when somebody's brand new. And what we need to do when we're talking to people and people are making that decision to join is to move people from that transaction, that membership transaction that says, I'm gonna be a member. Here's my welcome packet and so on and so forth, to, all right, now I feel like this is a community. And that's one of the things I think that happens, whether it's at the chapter level or going to and having an experience at AFAU or going to FinTech. It's those are our opportunities to make AFA a community. And I love the story of the logo and the three-sided fence with an open gate, the AFA being the open gate. And that to me illustrates this idea of everyone being welcome and our ability, our job as AFA leaders to make this feel like a community and not like a transaction.
Behind me alone is a community. I've
Yeah.
met people from Hawaii, Alaska, you name it.
Yeah, it's a great illustration of that.
I wanted to just chime in here, Ken, because I in 2018, and this was after my first maybe year of full being a director. I went to AFAU, and it was the first year of the CFC, the inaugural year of the CFC class. And I remember saying to my manager, I said, I'd really like to take this. I'd like to get involved. And so, they said, absolutely, why not? Which was another amazing opportunity to sit around and meet people, Ken, Nick, Brad, for the first time, not knowing who I am, not knowing who they are, but just to see what that community was like. And we all just hung out and talked, and didn't matter who you were. It was open, and we hung out, we studied together, and we shot the stuff, and it felt home. It felt like, wow, this is more than I've ever known. And that's where I guess that fire started, where I decided I wanted to be the next leader of the chapter.
Well, that's a perfect segue because let's kind of explore this, what it really takes to be a leader in AFA. I think that there's a common misperception is that there's just a secret cabal of AFA leaders you have to be tapped to get into. And I want to talk about the moment that you kind of decided, Mikey, just like you illustrated, that you decided you wanted to take a leadership role in this, and you raised your hand at the chapter level and then got involved. But what does it mean? What
Hmm.
does leadership mean to you guys in this organization where everybody is a leader in their company? I mean, most of the people who get involved and get engaged in AFA have a senior leader role in their organization, and you get a lot of those leaders together, and it, it can be a challenge. So, what does leadership mean to you in an organization, in this organization?
So, if you don't mind, Ken, I'd like to start. So I did not have a leadership role when I decided to be the chapter president. What I decided when I took the CFC, and how much it opened my mind to opportunities and chances, and then to really challenge myself, get myself out of this comfort zone, to say, you know what, I can always be here, but if I push myself just a little bit and I really start to set some goals, it changed my mindset on how I need to tackle business, how I need to speak to people, how I need to project myself, and what it means to actually lead. Leading is setting the tone and setting a standard, and then having people follow, and then you teaching them, and you seeing their capabilities, and watering it and seeding them, and making sure that they're going to get to that next part. So when I finally got through that class and I took leadership, yeah, and I came into this whole chapter presidency clueless, right into COVID, right? um it was very difficult, very uncomfortable, but what it means to be a leader is say, you gotta push through. you got to be persistent. You got to have drive, and you say, I may fail, but I'm going to keep going, and not to stop, not to break through barriers, and not to create them. Find a way. There's always a solution, and then people will eventually follow. And then that to me is leadership, right? It's an experience to move forward and not stop at anything.
Very nice. I like that those themes of being consistent, being reliable, providing a vision, and letting people learn to follow that vision. That's a very nice summary. So, what about you, Ken? How did you make that transition into leadership? I'm going to guess that it had something to do about the experience that you had at AFAU. Um, but how did you make the transition into leadership?
Um, a lot of it, I think, started, back at our chapter level. I know I'm board level, but back at the chapter level, as you know, that Michael Kalinich, past president, and then at the time our governor at the time, but of our chapter, but now our chapter president, Tom Poland, both sort of cornered me. I mean, I didn't go to the bathroom, but both sort of cornered me and said, we see a lot in you. We'd like you to help run the chapter, do that. And so, I said, sure. And, they backstopped me a lot. I reached out to them a lot with leadership. And then, as it goes through, Tony Thornton at the time, the executive director, I did that sales training school. Pat Bailey used to be the instructor of that school, and he's like, you need to come instruct with me. And Tony's like, hey, why don't you come instruct? We're going to do it at Fence Tech the next year. Do it. And so just taking those steps up, and then, seeing that, okay, maybe I am a leader and maybe I can, help out this industry the way they've helped me. It's made things great, at the chapter level, not as much, you know, dictating or anything like that, but like giving suggestions and stuff and moving forward with the chapters. It's a progression. The last three of our association presidents came through the chapters, Bobby, Brad, and McKay. And so, they know what happens at the chapter level and then goes to the national level.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. There's the piece that I'd like to add on to that consistency and reliability that Mike mentioned in your story. I hear that idea of mentorship and people opening opportunities for you to have, well, you being open to the opportunities, but people actually opening those opportunities to say, hey, let's get involved. We see something in you. Let's bring you on board. And that's, I think, between the two of you, you really articulated well this idea of how you move from just participating at AFA, attending a meeting, going to a training, and actually what happens when somebody says, "Hey, you have an interest in this. Let me attach you to that over here in AFA." And I think there's lots of examples of how that happens, kind of all throughout the organization. But I think it's a really good illustration of what happens when people are open to the opportunity of trying something new, of putting
Not the
themselves out there a little bit.
But that's not the only way. I mean, you look at a couple of our current board members, Lori Smith, for an example. She filled out the willing to serve. She didn't come through the chapters, and
Right?
she's a rock star.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Say the same thing about Catherine Mills. I mean, you know how much of a rock star she's been for us and our state in particular. But again, didn't come through the chapters, but what a game changer! What a game changer to have in the loop.
Yeah, I still, so the point that I want to do is when we see that spark and that kindling start to burn a little bit, we have to be, as leaders, as AFA leaders, we have to be open to saying, okay, well, where can I put this and cultivate it and foster it and
Yeah.
blow on it a little bit to have that spark turn into a fire. So I want to ask a little bit of a personal question. So all of you, both of you in are involved daily with decisions that are happening in an AFA. How do you balance your work responsibilities, your family responsibilities, and being a volunteer for AFA? How do you manage that?
Think for me, coming from a chef background, I work 90, 100 hours a week,
Right. Right.
weekends, holidays. The reason I got out of that is I wanted a family. I came home one day and my oldest son, who's now 23, was at the time 9 months old. I picked him up and he screamed like I was the biggest stranger danger type of thing. So I had to make a decision. Do I want to continue my career or be a family person? So having that mentality in the back where all those hours I work, you know, it works out. Now, is that what everyone does? No. They don't put 90 or 100 hours into a week doing volunteers and then running your own business. And then, I also volunteer for 4-H as a 4-H advisor. So, I mean, I know our Northern Ohio chapter president right now, Johnny Myers. He's a softball and baseball coach, and he's running his business, and now he's the chapter president. And so you look it around, and you make it work. If you're passionate about it, you make it work.
Mike, you're nodding.
Yeah, I could reverberate everything you just said. Ken, it takes hustle, it takes drive, it takes passion. Um, but when it comes down to it, balancing all this stuff, yes, it is a challenge, but that's how you grow as a person, as a professional.
Yeah.
And don't, there are stumbles along the way, there are failures along the way, there are missed opportunities, there's missed deadlines. And to me, that's part of the path to growth and being a better leader, being more organized. You find, I hate to say it, but you find a lot of the weaknesses within yourself when you're stretched this way. But it also creates this hardness and this elasticity that you can start to broaden your scope, and you challenge yourself to maybe let go of certain things and delegate a little bit more, which is part of leadership. You start to hone in on people that are capable, and then giving them a little bit more to show, and they do, and they step up. It's funny
Yeah.
how when we're operators, we're so like we have to be hands on, we have to be involved at all times. Really, that's where most people fall short. You need help. We need to ask. We need to curate other people. We need to build up other people. We need to elevate them and teach them to be just as good as you, if not better. And then you can move on and do other things. And that's where I've grown as an individual, because I'm still not very organized. You can see my back here, but it's organized chaos. It's all here. I got it. I know what I have to do. But it does have its ups and downs, man. But like you said, if you're passionate about it, you can get somewhere, and you have a goal, you go for it. You don't stop.
So, as I'm listening to you, and now that I've been involved in AFA, first as a consultant for several years, and then this last 3 years, how I see that being illustrated now is this transition in leadership. And I see it happening both at the chapter level as chapters get more invigorated and are doing more things in their communities, how there's an excitement at the chapter level and people are building out their boards, and they're working on succession planning, and they're implementing what both you all experienced on a small scale, on your individual scale. People are being much more deliberate about what's happening in these leadership roles. And then as we get involved with different initiatives, either you mentioned government affairs with Catherine a few minutes ago, or the work that we're doing, creating on an improved customer experience for folks, or an industry relations, we're engaging more people. And I like that idea of stretching them a little bit. So we're providing people the opportunity to stretch a little bit. And I think that's kind of ultimately how people grow into those leadership roles. And you're right, Mike, there are misled lines. There are unkept promises. There are challenges, there are failures or unmet expectations, and yet we just work through those, and it's a good experience on how life works.
Yeah. No easy answers, no easy way to do it. Otherwise, everyone would do it, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And moving the industry forward is hard. I mean, it's not easy. Everybody's got a different perspective.
I
So
want to point out something, Mike, real quick, because
yeah,
as I start to see the chapters really start to engage more, and in the last 2 to 3 years, I probably have never seen, and Ken, you can vouch for this, or say otherwise. I've never seen so many projects in 1 year done by so many chapters. I mean, it's incredible how
it is. It's
well
amazing.
they're integrating now their chapters experience and now giving back to the community, which is part of this whole thing. And they're running their business and they're running their chapters, but now they're doing it efficiently, and now they're getting more people excited and building out that next generation that hopefully carries that torch even further. I mean, the broadness and where we were and where we are, a tremendous jump. Again, especially from where I came 5 years ago to where we are now, night and day.
So, Mike, I'm going to use that as something you've learned about industry leadership that you might not have expected. Is visualizing how the organization, how that flywheel gets going, and that activity gets going. So, Ken, I'll ask you to end this segment with what have you learned about industry leadership that you might not have expected?
I mean, yes, it's industry, but just leadership in general. Um, Way back in the day when I was a chapter president, you had different professionals from the management staff. Jackie Lopez, she actually was an AFA Fusion employee, and so she would push me to be better leader and more professional. And hey, why don't you do this? But looking back at it, it wasn't a push, it was a suggestion, but now looking back at it, it was a push. I didn't feel it as a push at the time, but and then just moving forward throughout the career of having different leaders, give me suggestions, give me that push that didn't feel like a push, to be a better leader. I hope I've done it with Mike before. When I was the chair of chapter presidents, and I saw something in him, and I gave him an award, and it's one of those things, like, you receive it, but then you want to give it back.
Yeah, so when we're teaching leadership, one of the things we do teach is this idea of challenging the process. So if something's broken, you fix it. If something's good, you make it better. And so we've definitely adopted that mindset as we think about leadership in terms of that challenging the process or challenging what's happening and making it better, and that idea of inspiring that shared vision. And I think in both of your cases, kind of watching each of you develop throughout this last several years, it's really interesting that we've been able to provide you, each of you individually, with the experiences necessary to get you ready for that next level. And I think some of it was your choice, and some of it was that little push by people in the organization. So I think those are good experiences. So let's talk about the impact of this, and maybe let's not use you all as an example. So I'm going to give you a moment to think about somebody to use as an example, but can you think about how you can see in someone else in the industry um, how AFA and their leadership and their getting involved in AFA has had a positive impact on them as people and and their business?
Go for it, Mike.
All right. I mean, the last few years, I could pinpoint a lot of people that I've seen progress. I'm going to plug Melanie Goodwin in this one because not only when she came in as Camp Ellis gave her the opportunity to go to OMS, one of the first schools, and how much it invigorated her to be better, right? And then
So let me just break in, gather your thoughts. So OMS is the Operators Management
yeah,
School.
sorry,
It's okay.
yeah,
And
uh,
then and this is a chapter leader that you've seen develop over the time. So just
so
want to give
she
context to it.
yeah, I apologize. So she came in as my education director, or I pinned her out and I said, "Would you be interested?" And then this year, as I've seen her grow as an individual with the Women of Fence initiative, and to see how that scaled her up and how that made her feel even bigger, with being modest, by the way. This most humble person you'd ever meet, but has owned it and has just continued to drive forward, and now getting her into the next stage of what the New York chapter is going to be. She's going to be president, and when we gave her that opportunity to put her name in a hat, uh, the elatedness, and to see, I know what she's going to end up doing because she puts in the time. She's one of the few directors, and I hate to say it, in the time that I had, that was active. And when you see that kind of stuff, and then you see what they do on in their professional career, in the finance company she works for, and then see what she does on the volunteer level, jumping in front of people at the women offense speech, and taking it and just giving inspiration. I know from Nashville to Salt Lake City, that room doubled, if not tripled,
It did.
and it
It's
had a
giant.
lot to do with the women on that stage. And when I saw that her passion to just be to give back, it's a no brainer. And that to me is right there. That's where you cultivate and you nurture it, and you watch them grow, guide them, push them a little. But everybody had that. I had that with Ken, and and now it's me to do to somebody else, and that's where I see with particularly Melanie. So.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Good example. Ken, what about you?
In my local chapter, we have Johnny Myers, who's our chapter president, and then we have John Classic, who is our vice president right now from Veterans Fence. And so I have two great leaders in the growing stage, even though they're there already. But I remember I I tapped Johnny Myers to be an instructor when we had the school here in Ohio. And then I said, "Hey, you need to step up with the chapter. You need to step up with the chapter." And we finally got him to step up. And he's like, "I don't know what." He would call me, "What do I got to do? What do I?" And so he was gung ho, wanted to learn. I'm like, "Just calm down. We'll get you there." And he, the way his business started was he worked for one of the bigger fence companies in Northeast Ohio, and then jumped and started his own company, still purchasing from that, i.e., that's also his father-in-law's company. So there's a little bit there, but he's even this year he's starting to jump out and because of the connections of being a chapter president and meeting these different people, opening doors for vendors, say, "Oh yeah, I've seen you." It does help out. And then we have John Classic with Veterans Fence, who's our you know himself a veteran, but Veterans and Fence, he's huge with that. And I just see, not to toot Northern Ohio's horn, but we're going to be good for the next couple 5-10 years. So I'm really excited about that.
That's great. That's great.
I'm gonna say there's a couple of chapters on the radar that are gonna give a run for each other's money these next
Yeah.
couple of years. It's gonna be awesome.
It really is. It's very exciting to see how much leadership development is happening at that level. Um, so what there's an exercise that I like to do about people when we're doing leadership training and we're talking about values clarification. There's always this question that I have for folks to think ahead. And so, Ken, when you think ahead in terms of the legacy that you hope to leave for AFA, What what's that legacy?
Hmm. Threw me with that one.
Wow.
That's not in my notes here.
Right there first.
uh, yeah. No, I mean, I would hope that, I was fortunate enough to run the fence installation school, and I fenced in Sacramento, California to Tampa, Florida, and anywhere in between. And so there's a lot of people, my family makes fun of me that I can have my name tag backwards and people come up and say, "Hey Ken, how you doing?" And so I would hope that, and I'm horrible at names. I remember faces. I could say, "Oh yeah, I saw you in Baton Rouge," but I don't remember your name. Um, I would hope that people would think that can help get the education out to the industry. Um, that's what I'd hope people would think of when they hear Ken Throckmorton.
Mike, what about you? What do you think about your legacy, and what do you hope to leave within the AFA community?
Yeah, I think my real I think where I see my legacy hopefully landing is how we can evolve as how we can evolve the association on the chapter level and also just at the national level with better experiences when we look at people differently, when we listen to certain individuals and hear it and then take action. I hope that what I leave behind is at least the drive, the ability to say I'm going to take the bull by the horns and I'm going to get it done. And I'm going to give you all the tools. I'm going to give you all the tools to get there. All right, and we're here to support. So my legacy, I'm trying to make it clearer for you. I don't know how to make that clear, but I want to be as the proponent of growth, part of that whole initiative, and that people felt like, wow, this was an awesome experience. It really changed my perspective on professional life, personal life, because I did this. Because I did this. Because I went through the chapters. I'm a better person. Not this sucked. I want the 20 chapters. I want all those presidents to say this was awesome. I can't wait
Yeah.
for the next guy or the next girl, and then
I
to
think
keep that pushing forward.
I think both of those are just outstanding, because I think, Ken, when I hear you say that, you really were talking about that educational experience and driving that education experience forward. And Mike, I think that was a very good articulation in terms of the overall membership experience, and that and I heard that leadership piece of this. If they it's in my mind, it's okay if they think that it sucked. It's could they make it better? If they got into a bad, it's that whole idea of, change the situation and make that situation better. Take a bad situation, make it better. Take a good situation, make it even better. That's that idea of challenging the process and inspiring a shared vision.
I think some of the other things are, when I go around to these different regional or state, education events, you might have company A and you might have company Z that, oh, we never talk to them. No, we're not going to do that. They're our
Right,
competition.
right.
But at the end of that 3 day school, hey, it's okay to call them if you need a loop cap and you're on their side of the town to stop and get it and then return it later. And I've seen that transition really happen in the industry a lot now.
I've seen that too, and I'm gonna tell the story again with somebody who's not here today. So I was talking to another one of our board members, and we were talking about membership. And he said he was talking to one of our suppliers, and he was talking to a customer, and he said to that customer, "You need to talk." Somebody who's been in the industry for decades, and he said, "You need to go talk to uh, people at the chapter level." Well, I'm not involved in the chapter. I'm not even a member of AFA. I know what it is. I'm not even a member. And yet this individual pointed out and said, even though you've never seen the value of it, you need somebody else right now, and you don't have a network, even though you've been involved in this industry for 3 decades. And all you have is, I think it was a supplier issue, and they were trying to find a local supplier, and he needed somebody He needed advice locally, and he didn't have that connection. And that's the beautiful part of that's one of the beautiful parts of being involved in your chapter, in your local chapter. All right,
I
we're
want
going to
to
wrap
double
up
down on
now.
that real quick. I'm sorry to throw this.
No, you're okay. You're okay.
We want to make sure we're inclusive and not exclusive, and that's where, to driving your points right there, opening those doors and not closing gates. If that isn't what we are, I mean, that's where we are now, at least.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a really good illustration of where we are as an organization today. Okay, so we're going to close with a new kind of segment. I'm just going to ask you guys four quick hitting things to wrap this up in a nice little bow. So, Mike, I'll start with you first. What's the most important trait of an AFA leader?
Persistence.
Uh, a mentor that you'll never forget. Who is that?
Yeah, there's two of them in the room right now.
Oh, you're so full of it.
But it's, Tony was probably my first.
Yeah.
Ken being my closest. And the first leadership thing I sat through in yours was 2021, I believe. So I don't have one. I'm sorry, I can't answer
That's all right.
that.
So your proudest moment to date. Now you're going to have a lot, there's going to be a lot of things you're going to be proud of, but what are you most proud of today about your involvement?
I'm proud that as a New York chapter, we were able to pass the law to correct a latchgate issue within our state that was giving our members and our contractors the
Fits.
ability to close jobs and get COs. I mean, that was my biggest. I think that's my biggest right now.
Great. What's the one word that you'd use to describe the AFA community?
Family.
All right, Ken, same thing. What do you think the most important trait of an AFA leader is?
To be honest, I think it's listening. You get some people that will call and just go off sometimes on, hey, this person's not doing this or this person's not doing that. And if you just listen, 9 times out of 10, they'll figure it out themselves.
I think so. All right, you guys are expanding on these. I want the short answer.
Sorry.
Who is the mentor that you'll never forget?
I mean, I have to go with Michael Kalinich.
Oh, yep. What's your proudest moment to date? What's your proudest moment as an AFA volunteer?
I think being an instructor, and I know it's quick. I'm not going to be quick on this one, but seeing those less than 6 months students really figure it out, or seeing those 20 to 30-year plus veterans in the industry saying, I don't know why my boss sent me here. I know everything. But in the next hour, that look on their face is like, oh, I just learned something. So
what's the one word? Oh, go ahead. And
that's it. That's the one thing.
Yeah, it is that's a neat feeling. What's the one word you'd use to describe the community?
I mean, not to piggyback off of Mike, but it's family.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, we go to Fence Tech. My kids grew up, Travis's son, they'd be in the pool playing together at age 12, and so it's truly a family event.
Well, we're just going to leave it at that. That's a great way to close this episode. And I just want to tell you both, thank you for your participation. Thank you for your leadership in the organization. And I appreciate you both making the world a safer, more beautiful place. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.